Hello and welcome to the next episode of Point Counterpoint, the weekly debate show on Herald TV. Today we've decided to move out of the studios and take to the streets, primarily because the people of Goa have taken to the streets for days after days through feasts and festivals. Through rain and shine, people of Goa, especially the people of Old Goa, have stood, sat, walked, shouted, cried to ensure that the heritage of Goa is completely protected. We sit here in the backdrop of some amazingly ancient monuments, ASI protected sites, and behind us is one monstrosity, an illegal monstrosity, an illegal structure which has been blessed, passed and allowed by the powers that be. The sad part is that the structure and the house still exists in the name of a Goan family. We know that there are the real people behind it are politicians, politically backed people, and so on and so forth. But what is important is that a lot of permissions were taken in the name of a Goan family. And Zé Maria de Gouveia de Pinto is the Goan family in whose name the land was there earlier. What is interesting here is that after these massive agitations and sit-ins and dharnas and fast on to that, finally, after the revocation of the TCP license, the Chief Minister yesterday said in a statement that necessary action would be taken and the structure would be demolished. So with me are very eminent panelists, and we are here to kind of discuss this threadbare, not only about this particular structure, but looking into the entire gamut of illegal structures and how our protected sites are not really protected. They are at risk and they are vulnerable by the powers that be. I have with me Anthony De Silva, who is a very well-known human rights activist all the way from Valley, but he's taken up various causes through his long and very eventful life. Thank you, Anthony. Next to him is Tahir Noronha, a young architect of the Charles Correa Foundation, but he's here in his individual capacity because he feels for the cause, and he will delve a lot into the technicalities of how these structures are actually zoned in our regional plan. That's most important. And Glenn Cabral is right here from Old Goa. He is essentially fighting not just only for Goa, but for his own piece of land and his surroundings, because he is a child of this heritage area, and the pain that is being felt by him can only be understood. I'll start off by asking you, Anthony Bab, tell me a little bit about what you feel about the extent of the people's support and the agitation that has happened. How do you define this?
Before I start anything, I want to make very in a milder way to send a message that whatever this agitation was started, it was long back, more than 1.5 years back, was started by the people of Old Goa itself. And they are the brain behind all this. The base foundation was done by the people from Old Goa itself. It spread later on to other parts of Goa. We are just at the end moment where we came in solidarity with this. There were people who were on day-long hunger strike with Satyagraha. We were the supporting pillars. But as I was standing here and sitting here day-long from the day one, I came to understand that there is a lot of anger in the people, and they wanted to just vent it out. But by certain control over the people's minds, we saw that everything should be peaceful, because this Andolan is subtitled as Satyagraha. And we have got support from left, right, center, all the corners, east, west, north, south, all over. And every day we were hearing, they were just asking all these activists here and the social workers, तुम्ही आमकां सांगाय, आमी केन्ना येवपा जाय तें, केन्ना येवपा जाय तें सांगाय. And this has been going on. Last 10 days I have been seeing this. This agitation is not of any party. If people have tried to take any undue advantage, it is not of any party. Neither there is a misconception put out that there is a demolishing order. There is absolutely nonsense. There is no demolishing order. There is an order asking for looking into the matter.
Okay, Tahir, if you could just take off from where Anthony Babu left off, if you can just tell us that a lot of people are turning around and saying, well, the Chief Minister made that announcement and the Chief Minister said that it's all over because he's allowed demolition. If you can just explain to us as to why you all don't believe that is the case.
The Chief Minister said actually rather clearly that we are going to follow the steps as prescribed by the law to initiate the process of demolition. The Town Planners Department has already sent a letter saying take necessary action in accordance with the Panchayati Raj Act.
I'll just hold up this letter.
When one reads the letter and when one then later goes and reads the Goa Panchayati Raj Act, you see that there are two actions that the Panchayat can initiate against an construction that is found to be illegal. Subsection A says that the Panchayat may issue notice to revoke the construction license, and subsection B says that the Panchayat may also issue notice to initiate the demolition process. In this case, we have with us a show cause notice by the Panchayat which says that you have 7 days to please give us a reason as to why we should not revoke the license. Very important to note what the Panchayat notice says. The Panchayat has gone for subsection A of the Panchayati Raj Act and have asked for reasons why to not revoke the construction license, not asked for reasons as to why not revoke the demolition.
No, but the TCP has issued the revocation.
And issued a revocation of technical clearance. So how permissions are given in Goa is first the file goes to a TCP or a PDA. They give what's called a technical clearance. Then the file is supposed to come to a local body, as in Panchayat, and the Panchayat is supposed to study it on site, study the TCP technical clearances, and accordingly grant a construction license or not. In Goa, the sad reality is that every Panchayat and every municipality claims they lack the technical know-how, so they always issue a construction license which is a direct copy-paste of the TCP or PDA clearance. Ideally, in accordance with the 73rd and 74th Amendment of the Constitution of India, every Panchayat and municipality has the power to independently review and issue construction licenses with additional clauses and additional conditions.
So just to make it simple for our viewers, what you're essentially saying is that the TCP has only revoked the technical clearance, but the construction license is independent of that, and that still stands. So unless there is a demolition order, the structure can still stand. That's what you're saying, right? So what the Chief Minister announced and what the TCP here has said, all the TCP has said is take necessary action.
Yes.
It is not specified what the action is.
Yes.
The action could be demolition if the Panchayat so wishes.
Yes.
But that has not yet happened.
Yes.
Correct. So which is why you all are sitting here saying that irrespective of what the Chief Minister says, there is no order on paper which says that the structure has to be demolished, and that order has to come from the Panchayat, and the Panchayat has not revoked the construction license. That's the ground reality. Okay, fine. Glenn Babu, see you have been here and you've been a local, and if you recall that when the regional plan was being the plan that got scrapped, the so-called very infamous 2011 regional plan, and when the zoning for this area was being done, if you remember, one of India's best known architects, Edgar Ribeiro, had actually written a letter to the then Chief Minister saying that what is very important as far as this 2011 RP is concerned, that you need to look into the protection of the heritage sites and have a separate plan within the RP so that this whole zone becomes a demarcated zone and there is no construction whatsoever. There is no response to it. Are you aware of that? And then could you give us a slightly broader picture of not just this construction, but how the entire heritage precinct is totally vulnerable?
That's what our second demand is, that the structures, the monuments, whatever protected by state as well as national protected monuments, the buffer zone and the protected area should be marked on the RP 2021. That is a basic demand. Because without that, there are a lot of illegalities going on. Because there is a blame game between the departments saying that this department had not given permission, that department had given the permission. So until unless the plans are marked on the RP 2021, the blame game will continue and the illegalities will continue. Not only for Old Goa. So there are other places also there are protected monuments. For them also it is the same thing. So first demand is that you should immediately demolish this illegal structure. The protected area, and secondly, immediately it is the need of the hour that the government should demarcate the buffer zone with the protected area. So henceforth that legalities will be at least in some control.
Right.
Because over the period of time I have seen that like there is a lot of pressure from the real estate lobby to they are encroaching in the buffer zone area.
And that has happened in this area as well.
It's not one case, there are other cases, but that illegality was going on the buffer zone area. Now this illegality is just attack the prominent area of protected area, which is which do not do anything.
Anthony, I'll ask a quick question from what he said, and then I'll go to Tahir. See, he just now spoke something very important, and he says the real estate lobby encroaches into these buffer zones. Okay. Now, obviously, the real estate lobby cannot just encroach into the buffer zones unless they are guided and helped by the powers that be. It could be the panchayat, it could be the local MLA, it could be anybody. From your experience, not just here and other places, don't you think that until and unless there is a political will, this will never happen? Because the same MLAs who allow these constructions to happen get voted back to power. Doesn't it say something of the voters rather than these MLAs? Because if you have an MLA who is blatantly encroaching into these areas, building huge homes in the vicinity of heritage structures, and yet they keep on getting voted again and again.
This is absolutely right. Basically, this same thing follows. If you look at the hierarchy, the voters are buckled down by the MLAs. MLAs are buckled down by the cabinet ministers. They are buckled down under the CM, and the CM is buckled down by the center.
Right.
Basically, if I have looked into in the distant far vision of this structure could not stand without the central government top leaders. So to say, NC Shaina, who is the spokesperson for BJP, without her intervention through her connectivity, this could never have come like this so blatantly, and that also into a protected site which is guarded and sanctity of a religious place. May it be a temple, masjid or mosque. And not only that, all the rules and regulations has been grounded on their very nose, and within a fortnight, some permission has been allotted within 14 hours. So if they could form a government, I said, at midnight, they are doing this thing over a day. I have known with the powers that be, some mutation has been completed within 48 hours. So this happens only when the powers that be, they are under control of all such activities.
I would now like to draw attention to one very interesting document, which is the first document issued on the 3rd of February 2020, where the permission for repairs to the so-called existing residential house of survey 4.1 of this village, Vela, Old Goa, was given. Now, I will hand over this document to Tahir and ask him to read out. Of course, there are 10 points. You don't need to read out all the 10. But essentially, when you see this, what do you see? And do you see violations that have happened post this permission that was given? Just take a look at it and take us through it and tell us where you find the loopholes are.
Thanks, Sujay. I think that there are massive issues in this permission because this permission is pretty clear. Okay, this permission says, one, that there should be no variation in the length, breadth and height of the structure after repairs in comparison to the existing dimensions. Isn't this very, very clear? Because that means that before any construction was allowed, the local ASI man was required to go on site and measure the length, breadth and height of the existing loggia or little hut which is used to store coconuts. And there could be no variation of that. I'll go so far to say that in 2018, the local ASI man had already done this, as he had commissioned a survey of all of the ASI protected plots in Goa, including Fort Aguada and Tamdi Surla and several others. And at that time, that survey shows this structure as being 51 square meters and being a ground floor structure. With this point, now if you go and take a measuring tape, you'll just see the size of this construction and you'll know that it's a violation of this permission. Further, point number 11 says very, very clearly that this permission does not cover reconstruction. Now from an architect's perspective, and you can ask any engineer as well, what's the difference between repair and reconstruction? We use the words additions and alterations, which has also been used in the revocation order of the TCP. If you want to change any structural member, or if you want to change and extend the building in any way, including adding an additional floor or extending the plinth or digging a new foundation, we call these things as additions and alterations. And any engineer or architect will tell you that when you talk about repair, no additions and alterations are allowed. But if you say construction or reconstruction, it means that you can do additions and alterations. Right. These two to me are the core points.
Okay, I'll come back to you again. Now, Glenn, again to maintain continuity and taking off from where again Tahir left off. During the course of your agitation, these points must have definitely come up, and it's clear to everybody. What steps did you all take as citizens activists to point these out to the authorities, and what has been your experience in trying to raise these issues, all these issues?
We had a press conference initially to inform the people of Goa saying this is the thing going on. Before that we went to court also. One of our NGOs had went to court. Yes. But there we got a cold shoulder. Right. So our voice was not heard. So then we came on the street, we informed the people. Simultaneously, we had also written to all the MLAs to raise the issue in the assembly. Right. It was not done. Right. So after that, we thought that this agitation should go to all the villages. Still and unless the people will be not aware that what is going in Old Goa, because they thought that it's something small, it will be not affecting the heritage. Because it was presented by them, it's saying that it is far away from the heritage area. So this was a misunderstanding which was shown to the people.
The Chief Minister, he said that I have not received any representation and any complaint. Can you just clarify that for the people?
We had already informed, we had given the memorandum to CM. For that we had asked for the appointment, which we had not given. Then afterwards we had, with our delegation, we went and we had given them memorandum.
This was under what banner?
It was, it's not under one banner. As a citizen of Old Goa, we had given the memorandum.
And different signatories.
Right. And simultaneously we had given the memorandum to the DCP minister, who is also a minister for archives and archaeology. Right. So when we met the DCP minister, he had given assurance saying that he will look into the matter and the structure will be demolished as soon as possible.
Okay. So which year was this?
This is just one and a half month back.
You had met the current DCP minister?
Current DCP.
Okay. And what assurance did he give?
He had told us that the structure will get demolished as soon as possible.
Right.
But after that, there was no process to demolish the thing.
So what you are saying is that the government of the day was completely aware of it, and they did not hear about this through newspaper reports. There were clear representations with them. Okay. Tahir, I'll just quickly request you to explain to us the significance of this particular map, because you see there are two issues that we are taking up: demolishing the illegal structure and demarcation of protected zones and buffer zones in the regional plan. So can you just tell us through this map as to how our buffer zones have not been properly demarcated and how it has not been put on the plan properly for our viewers?
Let me go back to 1968. In 1968, the ASI took over the monuments in Old Goa, which include our Bom Jesu Basilica, the Say Cathedral behind us, St. Cajetan, as well as a few surrounding areas where they existed ruins. That area became known as the protected area. Now, the regional plan made in 1986, which was in power till 2001, did not show these protected areas. Neither did the regional plan made in 2011 till 2021, which is over here, show those protected areas. In fact, if you look here, most of the heritage monuments have been zoned as settlement zones. And this causes a lot of confusion to the people of Goa, who think that when they want to, like Mr. Pinto, for example, has seen that his plot is zoned as orchard, and so went to sell his land, saying like, okay, in an orchard you can build a single farmhouse. But that's not the case. A good example of where this has been done is the Delhi Master Plan, where protected areas have been zoned as white with a label saying protected area. Because then it becomes very easy for the town planner who's giving permission, as well as for the citizen who's selling his land, to know, okay, this falls under a different department and you need to get permission from a different department. in Goa what happens is that the town planning department and other departments have a list of all the protected areas, but they finally take a decision on where exactly the structure is in respect to the boundaries of the protected areas through a site inspection. Further, in 2010, the law that governs the ASI, the AMASR Act, was amended to introduce buffer zones. This regional plan came out in 2011. So this regional plan needed to not only show the protected areas, it needed to show the buffer zones which originate from the end of the protected area's boundary. Now, in this particular case, we have seen the minutes of the Conservation Committee meeting where it is written that the Conservation Committee visited the site and they measured the distance of the proposed construction from the heritage, from the protected area boundary, and they found it to be 100 to 300 meters away from the protected boundary. So this is where all the games are played. If the protected areas were superimposed on this site, then it would be very evident to the town planners, conservation committee, be who they may, that the construction is coming up within the protected area, and therefore they do not have the jurisdiction to even give permission. They had to first go to ASI Delhi.
Thank you, Tahir. Before I go to Anthony Baba, I'll just attempt to sum up what you've essentially said. Firstly, I think what needs to be done is that in all plans, zones have to be demarcated properly in a particular color, so that there is no confusion where the protected area is. And when it is completely protected, then it is bereft of any construction, which means that, you know, by default you cannot do any construction whatsoever. And that clamp down has to be made extremely clear. What you're essentially saying is that when they did the plan, they kind of left these loopholes so that ways and means could be found to actually do a different kind of a zoning and allow people to sell, and that confusion has happened. Do you think that this was done only for this structure, or do they have plans to do it all over the place in this area?
So I can give the example of Fort Aguada, which the Goa Heritage Action Group have now filed a PIL in the High Court against, and it's a very similar thing. Again, a site inspection has shown a proposed construction to be a certain number of meters away from the protected area of Fort Aguada, when actually, when one looks at it in a map, it is not so. So this type of confusion, I will go so far to allege, has been deliberate, and has been deliberate to the 21 ASI monuments and 54 state monuments across Goa.
Anthony Bab, the thing is, of course, Tahir has explained this wonderfully. Let us get back to the people's movement. At the end of the day, we began this discussion with a people's movement. Tell us about different groups that have participated. Only people's group. One is not interested in political groups. Yeah. Just the people's groups. Yeah. And then the other issue is that what happens is that in a long agitation, like we saw in the farmers' protest, it needs a lot more involvement. More people should come in. How do you see this movement proceeding from here? And what is needed? Because it needs more people coming in. You know, we just can't have people just coming for a little while, talking and going away. So what is needed to ensure that this movement, which is not only for the demolition of this structure, but also to ensure that our protected sites are protected and Goa is protected overall, how do you see this movement going forward?
Yeah. There has to be something which is concrete conviction of the people, and this conviction has to reach the grassroots. If agitation has to go like the farmers' protest, because it was every farmer, I understood, that they knew those three laws are bad in shape.
Right.
Now I'll go to your file if you don't mind.
Sure.
There is one point very much highlighted, yes, in that it is clearly mentioned. If we can reach out to the people, right, the permission for the repairs to the existing residential house, this goes beyond doubt. It is for repairs. Can this word repairs reach the grassroots people? Once the people get the hang of this repair, there is no reconstruction, there is no construction. So once the people are sure this is wrong, people will come. See, when I jumped into this was when I understood through Glenn that it is a protected site and there is no development at all. There is no question or no baggages. So once I understood there, see, I had come here for one day solidarity. But I continued this because I knew the victory is sure there in front of my eyes. Can we do this to the grassroots? Once this is sure to the grassroots, they know their goal is there, they will continue to come.
This is a fairly good point, and I'd like to point out one observation of the court, which is a very interesting observation when they made one of their decisions, where they actually mentioned that the words reconstruction and repair is still unsettled by law. At the end of the day, now that actually became a very big window for them to continue the way it continues. Don't you think that there should be a proper like a legal movement also to ensure that these terms are settled in law?
Yeah, see, as an activist now, being seen through media and all over Goa, there are thousands of questions are pouring in. It's like difficult. Yesterday till 2 o'clock.
No, in this particular case, it's crystal clear.
Yeah, so
when there was no structure, you cannot have such a huge house. That's visible.
Yeah, let it reach out loud and clear to everybody who are talking. They are going beyond this circle of this issue. I am trying to tell it to the people. Let this issue be put to rest. Once this is put in rest, the rest will follow.
Finally, I'll conclude with Glenn Bob. Glenn Bob, just the issue is, do you think, looking back at this agitation, if people had not come out in this kind of a manner from all walks of life, there are so many people sitting here, spending their lives, devoting themselves to this cause. Do you feel that if this people's movement had not happened, would the government have even moved? Point number one. Point number two, two quick questions. Point number two, do you think that if the elections were not taking place in the next 2 months, whatever has happened so far, even the very little that has happened, even that would not have happened? Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. The election was not at the corner. They could have not acted in such a fast manner. We are only scared of the election. Otherwise, they would have not listened to the people. Because we are fighting this almost 1 year past. We had made presentation, memorandum, press conference, invitation. Still, it was falling on the deaf ear. Now, just because our election are on just a few months away, so they are scared that people will vote them out, and because of that, they are just want to eyewash the people.
Thank you, Glenn. I conclude this segment of the debate with just this to say that where we stand now is at the crossroads. The government has shown some kind of an intent to kind of set this right, but that intent itself is A, probably conditional, and B, strategic. C, the intent the real intent will be actually visible only when the demolition orders are given. If they buy time in a manner where they try and delay due to words and delayed correspondence and get into inquiries and so on and so forth, then people might think that this is being done just to buy time till end of February and then put the whole thing back into cold storage. So the message that is going out from these grounds is that you need to act now, and the demolition has to happen now, because after elections the issue is we do not know what dispensation is going to come to power, and these things get completely lost when there are no impending elections coming. I conclude. I thank all three of you for very insightful points.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you as well. And in the second segment we'll have other speakers as well, and I hope this little talk of ours adds to the whole picture, and I hope this is an important brick in taking the whole discourse forward. Thank you very much.
Definitely, I want to also thank on behalf of Glenn and Tahir also for having reached out through the media. We are reaching out to the people, more and more educated, and the youth. Dev Baranguru.
Hello and welcome back to the second segment of our ongoing debate, Point Counterpoint. We are at the historic Old Goa precinct in front of the most ancient monuments of India, the Basilica of Bomb Jesus, the Saint Cathedral, and the Cajetan Church behind. We were speaking in the first segment of the huge people's protests that have emanated over an illegal structure, a private residential building in the heritage precincts of Old Goa. We will continue that discussion right now by speaking to other activists and people who have made this movement into their own. Olav D'Souza is from Sarauli, and he is part of the whole parishioners movement of Sarauli from South Goa. It just shows the extent to which people have been hurt. There are people who are not necessarily from here but feel for this and are coming in from all corners of Goa and being a part of this movement. Olav, tell us a little bit about your movement.
We have come to this place to show our solidarity to the people who are opposing this structure which has come in as parishioners of Sarauli, the group that we have come here. I would also request not just parishioners but the whole village from Sarauli should come and show their support to them, because this structure is totally illegal and we would want that to be demolished right to the zero. This is what I would like to say.
I would also like to point out, Olav, that what is interesting about this particular movement is that it is a movement across faiths, across castes, across economic standards. This has been a great leveler, because what happens is, and we are in front of one of the holiest places in the world, and as we sit here, we realize that this particular movement has really touched the heart of people. And it's almost like, as the people say, that look, our home of faith, our faith of humanity, okay, has been completely breached, and which is why I think it's striking a chord of people from the deep south of Goa to the deep north of Goa, in across all faiths. There are Hindus here, there are Catholics here, there are people from all over. And I think that is something which is the message that is coming out. Anna, could you just tell us a little bit more about this, and what has been your experience and what led you to take this up? And we know you're from Chimbel, again, not very far from here, but it just shows the reach and the fact that it is touching different people in different parts.
I came to know about this illegal structure, and that too in a heritage site. I was shocked, because the same thing we were fighting for Chimbel Lake, as well as Mount Carmel Church in Chimbel, which are in ruins. It was the first Goan church built by the Hindus, but we succeeded and we got it tagged as a heritage site. So this gave me a privilege. Why should I not help this people? And I took the lead to stay on a hunger strike in a Satyagraha. And I took the initiative, saying at least by this politeness, a war without weapon, that my prayers will be heard by the government and they will demolish this. This is how I joined here, and I'm there and I'm a got a lot of support from all the people, and people are so touched with this that today is the 11th day we are on hunger strike, and many more people want to join us, but because of the Navinas, we told them to hold on, because we didn't want anyone to pay because they are totally disturbed with this.
Olav, tell me, how do you all plan to spread this awareness in your villages, in your towns? Because of course your parish or your village has taken up this very noble cause, but since you're the first movers, as of sort, you and Anna in Chimbel, how do the first movers ensure that this does not die down? How do you plan to take it beyond your villages?
See, initially what happened was we attended earlier meeting which was held in Old Goa, and we found that we needed to support this cause. All of us should support this cause. And then we have a club in the village, so I put it on the village club. We have a not a notice on group, and everyone supported this. That's how we
No, my question was, how do you take it beyond Sarauli? How do you take it to, say, Betalbati? How do you take it to Kolwa? How do you take it to, say, Sanandre, for instance? It can be
like, for example, today you will telecast this on your message, so everyone will come to know, and people will follow suit. Like Katalbati, Gannauli, Korba, all of them will be ready to come and so this is what I would like to say. And not just a Catholic person, but all religions. Because Saint Francis Xavier, all religion people have faith in him. And that's how all, not just Catholic religion, everybody will come.
And now just one last question to you before we conclude this segment. Is that do tell us the role of the political class, and we're not talking of any particular party here. And look, these kind of interventions, people interventions have happened in Goa over the past. We obviously see state support in allowing these illegalities to continue. My question is, it's a catch-22 thing. A, we need better politicians, or we need a governance that is sensitive to the people. At the same time, the counter question is, how do you form that governance? The people need to make the right choices. Okay, so how do you bring about this synergy? Because at the end of the day, if you don't handpick the right people, then how do you get the governance that you seek? So how do you address this? Because at the end of the day, decisions are taken or not taken by the people who are voted to power. And I think effective choices need to be made as to who you are bringing to power. Your thoughts on this?
I would suggest that really we need a change. Because we see for the past, personally I have seen for the past 10 years, development is done. We need development, but not sustainable, but destroyable development. Wherever I went, I saw everywhere it was destruction. Everywhere there was illegally done. Even if they want to do a road, it is illegally done. All the politicians, they do their work all illegally without taking the villages into consideration.
Yes, but who elects those politicians?
It is we who elect them, but we had trust in them that they wouldn't do. But I feel that when they are on the chair, they are always corrupt.
Okay, thank you both, Anna and Olaf, for your thoughts, and I think let us keep this people movement going. And you've kind of thrown one small pebble into the ocean. I hope there are more people who do that so that the waters can be moved and a revolution of sorts really happens. But what we see gives us a lot of hope. Thank you both of you for contributing your time, your effort, and your sacrifices hopefully will be rewarded.